because they have always been accustomed to isolation, and they contribute therefore to the already general undermining of the family in the working class. A similar dissolution of the family is brought about by the employment of the children. When they get on far enough to earn more than they cost their parents from week to week, they begin to pay the parents a fixed sum for board and lodging, and keep the rest for themselves. This often happens from the 14th or 15th year 144. In a word, the children emancipate themselves, and regard the paternal dwelling as a lodging house, which they often exchange for another, as suits them. In many cases the family is not wholly dissolved by the employment of the wife, but turned upside down. The wife supports the family, the husband sits at home, tends the children, sweeps the room and cooks. This case happens very frequently. In Manchester alone, many hundred such men could be cited, condemned to domestic occupations. It is easy to imagine the wrath aroused among the working men by this reversal of all relations within the family, while the other social conditions remain unchanged. There lies before me a letter from an English working man, Robert Pounder, Barron's Buildings, Woodhouse, Moorside, in Leeds. The bourgeoisie may hunt him up there. I give the exact address for the purpose, written by him to Osler 145. He relates how another working man, being on tramp, came to St Helens, in Lancashire, and there looked up an old friend. He found him in a miserable, damp cellar, scarcely furnished, and when my poor friend went in, there sat poor Jack near the fire. And what did he, think you? Why, he sat, and mended his wife's stockings with the bodkin, and as soon as he saw his old friend at the doorpost, he tried to hide them. But Joe, that is my friend's name, had seen it, and said, Jack, what the devil art thou doing? Where is the missus? Why, is that thy work? And poor Jack was ashamed, and said, No, I know this is not my work, but my poor missus's ITH factory. She has to leave at 5:30 and works till 8 at night, and then she is so knocked up, that she cannot do aught, when she gets home, so I have to do everything for her what I can, for I have no work, nor had any for more nor 3 years, and I shall never have any more work while I live. And then he wept a big tear. Jack again said, There is work enough for women folks and childer hereabouts, but none for men. Thou mayest sooner find £100 on the road than work for men. But I should never have believed that either thou, or anyone else would have seen me mending my wife's stockings, for it is bad work. But she can hardly stand on her feet. I am afraid she will be laid up, and then I don't know what is to become of us, for it's a good bit that she has been the man in the house and I the woman. It is bad work, Joe. And he cried bitterly, and said, It has not been always so. No, said Joe, but when thou hadn't no work, how hast thou not shifted? I'll tell thee, Joe, as well as I can, but it was bad enough. Thou knowest when I got married I had work plenty, and thou knows I was not lazy. No, that thou wert not. And we had a good furnished house, and Mary need not go to work. I could work for the two of us, but now the world is upside down. Mary has to work, and I have to stop at home, mind the child, to sweep and wash, bake, and mend, and, when the poor woman comes home at night, she is knocked up. Thou knows, Joe, it's hard for one that was used different. Yes, boy, it is hard. And then Jack began to cry again, and he wished he had never married, and that he had never been born, but he had never thought, when he wed Mary, that it would come to this. I have often cried over it, said Jack. Now when Joe heard this, he told me that he had cursed, and damned the factories, and the masters, and the government, with all the curses that he had learned while he was in the factory from a child. Can anyone imagine a more insane state of things than that described in this letter? And yet this condition, which unsexes the man and takes from the woman all womanliness without being able to bestow upon the man true womanliness, or the woman true manliness, this condition which degrades, in the most shameful way, both sexes, and, through them, humanity, is the last result of our much praised civilization, the final achievement of all the efforts and struggles of hundreds of generations to improve their own situation and that of their posterity. We must either despair of mankind, and its aims and efforts, when we see all our labor and toil results in such a mockery, or we must admit that human society has hitherto sought salvation in a false direction. We must admit that so total a reversal of the position of the sexes can have come to pass, only because the sexes have been placed in a false position from the beginning. If the reign of the wife over the husband, as inevitably brought about by the factory system, is inhuman, the pristine rule of the husband over the wife, must have been inhuman too. If the wife can now base her supremacy upon the fact that she supplies the greater part, nay, the whole of the common possession, the necessary inferences that this community of possession is no true and rational one, since one member of the family boasts offensively of contributing the greater share. If the family of our present society is being thus dissolved, this dissolution merely shows that, at bottom, the binding tie of this family was not family affection, but private interest lurking under the cloak of a pretended community of possessions. The same relation exists on the part of those children who support unemployed parents. 147a, when they do not directly pay boarders already referred to. Dr. Hawkins testified in the Factories Inquiry Commission's report that this relation is common enough, and in Manchester it is notorious. In this case the children are the masters in the house, as the wife was in the former case, and Lord Ashley gives an example of this in his speech. 147b. A man berated his two daughters for going to the public house, and they answered that they were tired of being ordered about, saying, "Damn you, we have to keep you." Determined to keep the proceeds of their work for themselves, they left the family dwelling, and abandoned their parents to their fate. The unmarried women, who have grown up in mills, are no better off than the married ones. It is self-evident that a girl who has worked in a mill from her 9th year is in no position to understand domestic work, whence it follows that female operatives prove wholly inexperienced and unfit as housekeepers. They cannot knit or sew, cook or wash, are unacquainted with the most ordinary duties of a housekeeper, and when they have young children to take care of, have not the vaguest idea how to set about it. The Factories Inquiry Commission's report gives dozens of examples of this, and Dr. Hawkins, Commissioner for Lancashire, expresses his opinion as follows. 147c. The girls marry early and recklessly. They have neither means, time, nor opportunity to learn the ordinary duties of household life, but if they had them all, they would find no time, in married life, for the performance of these duties. The mother is more than 12 hours away from her child daily. The baby is cared for by a young girl or an old woman, to whom it is given to nurse. Besides this, the dwelling of the mill hands is too often no home but a cellar, which contains no cooking or washing utensils, no sewing or mending materials, nothing which makes life agreeable and civilized, or the domestic hearth attractive. For these and other reasons, and especially for the sake of the better chances of life for the little children, I can but wish and hope that a time may come in which married women will be shut out of the factories. 148a. But that is the least of the evil. The moral consequences of the employment of women in factories are even worse. The collecting of persons of both sexes and all ages in a single workroom, the inevitable contact, the crowding into a small space of people, to whom neither mental nor moral education has been given, is not calculated for the favorable development of the female character. The manufacturer, if he pays any attention to the matter, can interfere only when something scandalous actually happens. The permanent less conspicuous influence of persons of dissolute character, upon the more moral, and especially upon the younger ones, he cannot ascertain, and consequently cannot prevent. But precisely this influence is the most injurious. The language used in the mills is characterized by many witnesses in the report of 1833, as indecent, bad, filthy, etc. 148b. It is the same process upon a small scale, which we have already witnessed upon a large one in the great cities. The centralization of population has the same influence upon the same persons, whether it affects them in a great city or a small factory. The smaller the mill, the closer the packing, and the more unavoidable the contact, and the consequences are not wanting. A witness in Leicester said that he would rather let his daughter beg than go into a factory, that they are perfect gates of hell, that most of the prostitutes of the town had their employment in the mills, to thank for their present situation. 148c. Another, in Manchester, did not hesitate to assert that 3/4 of the young factory employees, from 14 to 20 years of age, were unchaste. 149a. Commissioner Cowell expresses it as his opinion that the morality of the factory operatives is somewhat below the average of that of the working class in general. 149b. and Dr. Hawkins 149c says, an estimate of sexual morality cannot readily be reduced to figures, but if I may trust my own observations and the general opinion of those with whom I have spoken, as well as the whole tenor of the testimony furnished me, the aspect of the influence of factory life upon the morality of the youthful female population is most depressing. It is, besides, a matter of course that factory servitude, like any other, and to an even higher degree, confers the jus primi noctis upon the master. In this